Today I share with you from the 5th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. There I'll be reading verses 13 through 20. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything, but it's thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. I remember sitting down at a evangelism committee meeting at a church I once served. It had been called by the chairperson of evangelism, and all the members of the team were invited to this chairperson's home for a meeting to discuss how we could, increase our membership through evangelism. We all got there, and the chairperson passed out a list of all the inactive members of the congregation and said, what we need to do is contact each and every inactive member of this congregation, because there's over 70 of them. And if we get half of them back, we'll have almost a third as many people come to worship as usual. And so they started. I was a new pastor there. I hadn't been there but a couple months. They started dividing up the names between all the people there as to who would contact whom. Remembering who was related to who and who was, not getting along with who. And so they divided up all these names, and everybody by the end of it had, their task to do. I remember as we talked about the names, some of those rather odd things came up. I can't call them because they're upset about what my brother did to their sister's son's wife, or something like that. And it was really kind of funny to hear some of the conversations. But as a new pastor, I just sat there and I thought, they're making an effort here. Let's see what happens. But then at the very end of all the conversation, of all the divvying up of names, of all the assignments being given, one of the people there stood up and said, I guess that about does it, and I reckon we'll do just about as good as we did last year with this project. And someone else on the team, a new member of the committee, said, how many did we get last year? I said, same as we did the year before. None. And so I just kind of walked out with the rest of the group, and I found the person who asked the question. I said, how long have you all been doing this? He He says, oh, 5 or 6 years. I said, have you gotten anybody? He says, nope, not a one. But we figure if just that one would come back, it'd be worth it. I thought to myself, man, this is a strange way to do evangelism, you know? Going out and trying to find inactive members year after year after year when you know what the results are going to be. I mean, they had 5 solid years of proof of what was going to happen. And yet, still, they decided this was the way to evangelize. I think it's really interesting to think that that is the way to evangelize when we hear these words from Matthew's Gospel this morning, these words of Jesus that say, you are salt, you are light. But it doesn't say you are the salt of members of the church, or you are light for those in the community of faith. What it says is, you are the salt of the earth. Very good. You are the light of the world. Not salt and light for this group of people, but light and salt for everyone else around us, for the whole world. That is who we are salt and light for. William Temple, Archbishop of Canterbury, has been quoted many times as saying, the church is the only organization on earth that exists for those who are not its members. Think about that for a minute. The church is the only organization on earth that exists for those who are not its members. You are salt of the earth. You're here to show the saltiness, the flavor that God has brought to this world through Jesus Christ, the one who fulfilled the law and the prophets, the one who through receiving him, we have a righteousness that exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees, a righteousness we cannot get on our own, but can only have through him. You are the salt of the earth. You're not here for the church. You're here for the world. Ann Dillard, author, writes, you know, you don't have to sit outside in the dark. However, if you want to look at stars, you will find that darkness is necessary. You, my brothers and sisters, are light. Light of the world. And yes, from time to time, that may mean that we will find ourselves in darkness, because where does light shine the best? In the darkness. We may find ourselves among those who lack hope in this world, because that is where the light of hope is needed. We may find ourselves among those who lack love in this world, because that's where the light of love is needed. You know, several years ago, I read this book. As I was working on the sermon this week, I'd oftentimes look up at the shelves of books that I read, and my eyes fell on this one particular title, and I think I'd seen that book in a long time. Don't know why, but as I thought about it, I said, that's interesting in light of this passage. It's a book by John Irving. Anyone ever suffered through a John Irving novel? Okay? No one? You haven't had that experience. Okay, you need to at least get one, all right, and try it. But this was A Prayer for Owen Meany, a book from several decades ago. Oh, someone has suffered through John Irving, I see. All right? Yes, all right, good. Thank you. It's good to know I'm not alone here. A Prayer for Owen Meany is a rather odd little book. It's the story of two friends. It goes back and forth, and the way it's written is hard to read at times, but it's a great novel about how these two friends relate to one another, and especially how one friend sees the other's life. John Wheelwright is the narrator of the story, and Owen Meany is his friend, and his friend is rather strange. He's short-statured, meaning shorter than me, okay? And he has this really high-pitched voice, even as he grows older, so that this high-pitched voice never kind of goes away. And it tells about them growing up together and Owen getting picked on a lot and John sticking up for him, but they were best of friends. And it tells about their life through school, through many different things. And one repeating narrative that comes up throughout their life is that Owen has this idea that God has chosen him for something special. I mean, this tiny person, he keeps saying, God has me here for a special reason. And he keeps talking his friend John into practicing this trick basketball shot. Okay, now I can't and don't want to read it straight from the book, but it's this rather odd shot where John stands near or under the basket, Owen comes running, and John picks him up and throws him towards the basket so that he can dunk the basket. And they practice this over and over and over again till they can do it in under 3 seconds. Under 3 seconds. Now, in fact, it starts out even differently. John gets the ball, throws it to Owen, and then runs under the basket, and then Owen dribbles towards him, and he picks him up and throws him up. All right, so there's this whole action, and it all has to take place in less than 3 seconds. And when they finally get it to that, Owen says, "We've got it." And John's like, "What do you mean we've got it? We can never use this in a basketball game. It's illegal. You can't throw someone up to a basketball, to the net." And he says, "Don't worry, John. It'll be clear one day." Well, as they grow older, the Vietnam War breaks out, and Owen can't serve overseas, but decides he wants to serve his country anyway. And he does so by being a casualty officer. Probably one of the worst jobs you could take, because you're the person who goes to deliver the news that a loved one has passed away, sometimes even bringing the body with you. Owen kept having repeating dreams of when he would die, and he shared those with John, and the date for that was coming around, and John went to visit him, and on that particular day, he had to deliver a body to this family in Arizona where he was working, and the brother of this one who had passed away in the war was absolutely livid, angry about what had happened, said, "This should have never happened, and how can we allow this to happen to our young people? How can we let our enemies destroy our young people like this?" Well, John and Owen leave. What they didn't realize is that this brother followed them back to the airport where they had landed. And the brother is there and watching them as coming into the airport was a whole group of Vietnamese refugees, including children. The brother sees these Vietnamese and thinks immediately of his brother dying at the hands of these people and can't understand how we would welcome them. And so he takes out a hand grenade and throws it into the midst of the children. It happens to land somewhere close to John's feet, who immediately, on reflex, picks it up. And it's then that he notices Owen is running across the floor towards him, grabs the hand grenade, and on reflex, John picks him up, throws him towards a window. And the hand grenade and Owen go out the window to explode, saving the lives of all those who were inside. Owen, however, died. We hear the words, "You are salt. You are light." And unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you won't even enter the kingdom of heaven. And you know, I couldn't help but think about that witness, that testimony I read there, because it reminded me of the greatest witness and testimony of Jesus Christ, the one who was willing to die on a cross for us. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Go and be what Jesus has told you you are. Amen?